morning. Welcome to First Parish Church in Billerica, a Unitarian Universalist welcoming congregation. Whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you're welcome here this morning, and we invite you to stay after the service to chat in the sanctuary a bit, and on Zoom. We're figuring it all out, but we can manage to chat with each other eventually. My name's Brita. I'll be the worship assistant for today's service. And our worship leader this morning is Doug Mutter. He's a retired mathematician. He's a member of the Bedford Church. He writes a fabulous blog called The Weekly Sift, which I invite everybody to check out. And he is just very, very, I want to say smart. Well, you are. You put things very well. And your sermons, I've preached first before. His sermons are always very, very interesting. And we're very, very happy to have him with us here this morning. We are still doing, because of COVID, of course, we are kind of easing off. We're able to meet in person, but we are still practicing social distancing. We encourage people to wear masks. And it's up to everybody, though. And we also, I believe, are not singing yet in the church. I'd like to start by acknowledging that First Parish Church was built on the unceded land of the Pawcatuck and Massachusetts peoples. And we acknowledge the connection that they have continued to maintain with the land here in this place that we call Billerica. And we recognize the hardships they've endured and commit ourselves to caring for the land and fostering good relationships with our Indigenous neighbors. Here are our opening words.
The opening words are from William Somerset Maugham. A Unitarian very earnestly disbelieves in almost everything that anybody else believes. And he has a very lively, sustaining faith in he doesn't quite know what. Right. So as we light the chalice, I invite you to join in the words in the order of service. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather together in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. And we continue with our affirmation of faith. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. The opening hymn is number 61 in the hymnal. Again? Okay. In 2012, April Fool's Day fell on a Sunday, so the Reverend Erica Hewitt of the UU Church in Santa Monica preached a sermon on UU jokes. And by the way, for those of you who aren't UU trivia buffs, Santa Monica was Rod Serling's church. So if you had ever suspected that the Twilight Zone came from a Unitarian point of view, it did. Anyway, she started out her sermon by telling a few UU jokes. Each religion has its own holy book. Judaism has the Torah. Islam has the Quran. Christianity has the Bible. And Unitarian Universalism has Robert's Rules of Order. But eventually, she raised the same issue that showed up in our opening words. What do Unitarian Universalists really stand for? Our tolerance or penchant for ambiguous theology intersects with what I believe is the most egregious UU stereotype, that we are a faith with no core religious message. When it comes to defining who we are as an association and what we believe as individuals, our answers rarely satisfy. Question, what happens when you cross a UU with a Jehovah's Witness? Answer, they knock on your door but have no idea why. We're even mocked on The Simpsons. On one episode, the Simpson family attends a church ice cream social where Lisa is impressed by the choice of ice cream available. Wow, she raves, look at all these flavors. Blessed Virgin Berry, Commandment, Bible Gum. Or Reverend Lovejoy says, if you prefer, we also have Unitarian ice cream. He hands Lisa an empty bowl. There's nothing here, says Lisa. Exactly, says Lovejoy. But by the end of her sermon, Hewitt isn't laughing anymore. There comes a point for me at which jokes like these cease to be funny, by virtue of their volume and ubiquity and the truth that they hold. Isn't it so, after all, that we continue to define ourselves more by who we aren't than who we are? Isn't it true that we're rendered tongue-tied when friends or coworkers ask us, what do you believe? I don't want our distinguished liberal religious movement to be portrayed as an empty bowl. I don't want to belong to a faith where you can believe anything you want and change your mind whenever you need to. Our beliefs will change throughout our lives. We're never done learning. But religious faith is not disposable. I don't want to be laughed at. I want to co-create a faith that garners respect. The second reading is by me. It's a sign of old age when you start using your own writings as readings. It's an admission that your own past has become so distant that your memory of it should no longer be trusted. If you wrote something down at the time, that's probably more accurate. This reading is taken from a column I wrote for UU World called At My Mother's Funeral. My mother died in 2011, and I went back to my Midwestern hometown for the funeral. Mom had chosen the elements of the service herself, so it reflected her Christian belief that death is just the beginning of eternal life in heaven. I had trouble relating to that, and here's what I wrote afterwards. Whether anyone else in the room was harboring secret doubts or not, I felt alone in facing the possibility that death is final, that I will never see my mother again, that our interrupted conversations will never be finished, and that all the things we didn't understand about each other will never be understood. Somewhere in the middle of those dismal reflections, I almost laughed at myself. Wait a minute, I thought, I'm the Unitarian Universalist in the room. I'm supposed to be the one who can believe whatever he wants. Over the years, I've probably heard a dozen UU ministers' explanation of why the old saw Unitarian Universalists can believe whatever they want isn't quite right. But until that moment at Mom's funeral, I had never grasped how exactly backwards it is. Unitarian Universalists are precisely the people who can't believe whatever they want. The image of Mom in heaven, young and vibrant again, seeing everything, hearing everything, skipping gaily about on two perfect legs. How could anyone not want to believe that. The vision of heaven itself, a perfect place where all loved ones will reunite, and all pains and doubts and disagreements will be revealed as the illusions they always were. I don't want to reject it. I just can't sustain it. Like a multi-story house of cards, it always collapses before I can get it finished. The old religious authorities taught that people needed something or someone to keep their beliefs in line. Otherwise, they believe all kinds of frivolous, self-serving, and wish-fulfilling things. But is frivolity, self-service, and wish fulfillment what Unitarian Universalism is about? Is that what I was doing at the funeral? No, quite the opposite. Today's Unitarian Universalists continue to be free of external discipline, but the point is to be self-disciplined, not undisciplined. We're the people who take responsibility for disciplining our own beliefs. Like any other responsibility, religious responsibility is a two-edged sword. On the one hand, my beliefs feel more straightforward and authentic because I haven't twisted them to fit some external authority's template. But on the other, I am cut off from the comforts of frivolous, self-serving, and wish-fulfilling beliefs. Building on Erica Hewitt's theme that we're never done learning, well, now hear Alanis Morissette's You Learn. So we're ready to go? Every year, if we have enough interested kids of the right ages, the Bedford Church, like in a lot of UU churches, offers a coming of age class. From fall to spring, our teens explore what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. They learn UU history, do service projects, hear what famous UUs have said about the big questions, and interview members of the congregation about their beliefs. And then in May, the program culminates in a service that turns the traditional Protestant confirmation ritual upside down. When I was confirmed in 1970, my classmates and I had to demonstrate that we understood the teachings of our conservative, almost fundamentalist Lutheran Synod. And in the spring, we solemnly affirmed to the whole congregation that we agreed with them. A UU coming of age service, by contrast, focuses on the young people's beliefs, not the congregation. One by one, they stand in the pulpit and present a personal credo. In other words, they preach to us about their deepest convictions. It's always an engaging service because there's no predicting what you'll hear. One of the teens might believe in reincarnation. Another is inspired by Zen. And the third is a hardcore rationalist. Some are optimists and some are pessimists. Some think the purpose of life is to pursue happiness, while others focus on service. Some want to create beauty, while others want to acquire knowledge and solve problems. My Lutheran confirmation was about pledging to remain steadfast in the common faith, a promise that I was unable to keep. If anyone had realized at the time how much my beliefs would change in the next few years and keep changing for decades after, I imagine that thought would have depressed them. It would have undermined the meaning of the whole ritual. But when I attend a UU coming of age service, I look back on my own religious journey, and I expect that the beliefs I'm hearing will change. 10 years down the road, the young man who tells us about reincarnation may not remember why he said that. The young woman who intends to center her life on pursuing happiness may someday come to a place where happiness seems impossible. She may need to find inside herself a grit and determination that has little to do with happiness, but that will see her through to a time when happiness once again becomes a viable goal. But anticipating those changes doesn't make the service any less moving or inspiring, because I think we all understand the commitment that the young people are really making. They aren't pledging to believe these things for the rest of their lives, a promise they would almost certainly break. Rather, they're committing to take responsibility for their beliefs. Alone up there in the pulpit, They can't hide behind their parents or the church or creed or a holy book or even God. They are announcing at this moment, this is how I choose to approach my life. And if those choices have consequences, they're on me. It's a brave thing to do. Watching young people construct their own version of Unitarian Universalism always makes me want to reconstruct mine. And that's what I want to talk about today. How my beliefs have had to change, not just until I became a UU, but since I became a UU. Probably the most significant thing I've had to reevaluate about my faith is the centrality of freedom. Our fourth principle affirms a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. But when I was becoming a UU in the 1980s, the emphasis was almost entirely on freedom rather than responsibility. The most important feature of UUism then was not something it had, but something that it didn't have. No one would tell you what you had to think. That's why we might have appeared from the outside to be offering an empty bowl or to have a lively, sustaining faith in we know not what. That emphasis made sense for the world I grew up in, where my family, my church, the teachers at my Lutheran elementary school, and American culture itself were all trying to imprint Christianity on me. To me, the outside world seemed like a unified, oppressive force trying to squelch my capacity for independent thought. Saying no to that, saying I'm going to live by the faith I actually have rather than the faith that everyone tells me I ought to have, was a revolutionary act. And I saw that revolution as a precondition for everything else. Until I had staked out and defended my spiritual and intellectual independence, it didn't even matter what I believed in my heart of hearts. Because if I'm going to spend my life pretending to believe the Apostles' Creed, who even cares what I really think? But the kids I meet in the Bedford coming-of-age classes don't live in that world. And while some young people do still grow up in oppressive religious environments, that's no longer the general experience of American society. Yes, conservative Christians do still aspire to dominance and try to make laws that impose their faith on the rest of us. But that effort gets increasingly desperate each year. They need power of government now, and especially the power of unelected judges, because they lost the battle for the larger culture long ago. But no rival faith has taken Christianity's dominant place. So for most young Americans today, and particularly for those who grow up UU, the outside world does not feel like a monolithic force trying to control their minds. It's more like a desert or even a vacuum. The threat outside the walls of the church is not that some eye of Sauron will dominate. It's that they will wander out there and get lost in the trackless waste where nothing is true, nothing is right or wrong, and nothing is more important than anything else. When you find yourself in a trackless waste, no one needs to remind you that you are free to go in any direction you want. What needs to be affirmed is that there are places worth going and some hope of getting there. In the current environment, it can actually be dangerous to tell people that they can believe whatever they want, because look around. Lots of people are doing precisely that to an extent that the UUs of the 1980s never imagined. Do you want to believe that your candidate won the election when every method of counting the votes says that he lost? Go ahead. Do you want to believe that COVID is a hoax or a bioweapon intentionally released out of labs in Ukraine? Why not? Do you want to believe that your political opponents are blood-drinking, child-abusing Satanists or reptilian aliens? It's up to you. There are no facts, just I want to believe this and you want to believe that. That kind of freedom isn't what Unitarian Universalism is about or has ever been about. When our kids consider what they mean by the word God and discuss whether such a being exists, they're doing something very different from the QAnon folks who assure each other that JFK Jr. is going to return from his apparent death and lead them in a bloody counter-revolution. The difference is in the responsible part of our free and responsible search. Our beliefs aren't just for our own justification or entertainment. If we hold our beliefs responsibly, they change how we live. And if we live actively, the effects of those beliefs go out into the world, benefiting some people and perhaps harming others. And we're responsible for those benefits and harms. It's on us. Think about climate change. Do I want to believe that the planet is getting warmer and the rising temperatures will have devastating effects unless we make serious changes? Of course not. If I could snap my fingers and make that not be true, I would. You probably all would. Am I free to deny global warming? I suppose I am. If I say it's all a myth and start living as if burning fossil fuels isn't a problem, nobody's going to punish me. But I'm not just free, I'm responsible. Living that way has consequences, and I have to take those consequences seriously. Or think about privilege. I benefit from a long list of privileges. I'm white, male, heterosexual, cisgender, native-born, neurotypical, English-speaking, and professional class. I'm not just educated, I got my education at a time when it was cheaper, so I didn't have to pile up student debt. Do I want to acknowledge all those unearned advantages? Not at all. I want to say that everything I have comes entirely from my own talent and hard work. And I'm free to say that. But to the extent that I promote the myth that the world is already just, the continuing injustice of the world becomes my responsibility. If your world is dominated by oppressive belief systems, Unitarian Universalism's most important feature is the freedom it offers to develop your own conscience and live by your own values. But in American society, as I experience it today, what matters even more is the responsibility of our search. By contrast, much of what passes for religion in America today enables irresponsibility. Too many churches are like money laundering banks. They shield their members from the ugly consequences of self-serving beliefs. Imagine, for example, that I'm a young man looking for a wife. If I tell each woman I meet that I intend to dominate her and that after we are married, I will decide what she can and can't do with her life, I sound like a jerk. But suppose I say instead that my church believes in the traditional family. God has a plan for us all. And that plan has separate lanes for men and women. The consequence of those beliefs can be exactly the same. But once I launder them through a church, my responsibility vanishes. Now I'm not a jerk, I'm a man of faith. And if being dominated doesn't make you happy, don't blame me, blame God. Or suppose I set myself above people who are gay or trans or not white, and I do things that makes their lives harder. By myself, I would be a hateful bigot. But if I can find a church to justify me by emphasizing the parts of the Bible I like and interpreting them in ways that please me, then I have been transformed. Now it is God who hates, and I am just devout. Unitarian Universalism does not provide that service. It won't launder the dirty consequences of your beliefs and leave you spotless. If your actions cause harm in the world, that's on you. It's not the church or some prophet or priest. It's not a creed or a holy book, and it's certainly not God. It's you. This is a faith for people who take responsibility. One of the exercises we always have the coming-of-age students do is to write an elevator speech. The idea is that you're on an elevator when someone asks you about your religion. What can you manage to communicate before the doors open and you go your separate ways? UUs are particularly bad at this exercise because we always want to include a few more caveats and nuances. In all the times I've been involved with coming of age, I've never come up with an elevator speech I like. Until now. Here it is. Unitarian Universalists take responsibility for disciplining our own beliefs so that they are factual, reasonable, just, and kind. We will not stop learning, growing, and changing until we become the people the world needs. Having come this far, I might as well close by completing the coming of age program and presenting my credo. So far, I've talked mainly about how UUs believe and haven't said much about the content of my personal beliefs. So here it goes. This is what I believe. I believe that the universe is far bigger and more intricate than human minds can grasp, and that we deal with that deficiency by telling stories. But the universe fundamentally is not a story, so we will never get it completely right. Nonetheless, I constantly try to improve my stories by testing them against the observable facts and changing them when they conflict. I judge right and wrong by human standards. Things are good or bad according to how they affect people and other conscious beings, and not because some book or institution says so. I give precedence to the things I know rather than the things I merely imagine. So while I sometimes have intuitions about higher intelligences or what might happen after death, I hold those beliefs so lightly that they have little effect on my actions. I believe meaning is something that stories have, and so I look for a meaningful life by striving to tell a meaningful life story. A meaningful story has to be credible, which is why integrity is so important. I believe in trying to be the person I say I am. A good story evokes awe and wonder, so it is important that I find and create beauty in my life. The variety of beauty I personally resonate with most is the beauty of knowledge and ideas, which is why I put so much effort into understanding what is happening around me. Other people resonate primarily with other forms of beauty, and that's fine. We don't all need to be the same. A story is more convincing when it is shared, when many people tell similar stories about similar things. And so it is important that I not be the only significant character in my story. I want to share my life with others and live in a community of people who care about and appreciate each other. Nothing undoes the beauty of a story quite so effectively as a sense of hidden evil, of questions that we dare not answer and doors that we dare not open, lest all that hidden ugliness spill out. And so I believe in justice. I believe in looking squarely at the evil in the world and trying to fix it, rather than hiding it away and pretending it's not there. And finally, I believe I'm going to die, probably at some unpredictable moment, and that everyone I care about will die someday as well. Any organization I join will someday fail. Cultures will change, civilization will collapse, and ultimately the universe itself will go cold. So the satisfaction invoked by my life story can't depend on a happy ending. Fortunately, it doesn't need to. I don't need a story that lasts forever. I only need one that stays meaningful until I die, and that is not undone by the prospect of my death. In other words, I need my story to be part of a larger story that will continue past my death, in the stories of others, in the story of my community, and in the story of the struggle to understand the world and achieve justice. That is the kind of life I'm trying to live, and the story I'm trying to tell. That's me. But this is Unitarian Universalism, so you are free to disagree with any of that. Nonetheless, I invite you and encourage all of you to examine your own lives, your own stories, and your own beliefs. Deciding who you're going to be is not just a job for teenagers. Periodically through our lives, I think, we need to renew our sense of who we are, how we're going to live, and what we think about the world we live in. I wish you well in your free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
Thank you, Doug. I have to go think about everything now. Very, very, very helpful. Our Unitarian Universalist churches are self-supporting. Your gifts of time, faith, love, and of money is what sustains the work of the church. The morning's offering will now be taken and gratefully accepted. And we can just hum the doxology here in the sanctuary, but the problem is saying, okay.
As we extinguish the chalice, we remember the words printed in the order of service. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Closing hymn is number 303. We are here, but right and proud.